Hello, my lovely nerdy friends, and welcome to this make-along of this year's Advent calendar featuring Sisyphus pushing that rock up that hill. Hopefully by now you've printed out each of the sheets that make up this particular Advent calendar. I like to print them on 300 GSM light card, but if you print them on regular paper and then back that paper onto another sheet of paper with some dry glue, that will have the same effect. You will need a craft knife for cutting out the slots that Sisyphus will go into, and a scissors for cutting out all the other pieces. It's not too fiddly. And dry glue, like a Pritt stick, is the most ideal glue for using with this project. Right, let's get started. Start with the base. There are two of these pieces. They just need to be cut out, folded down the middle, and then glued on the inside so that the fold stays and you have one double-sided piece. And then you'll cut out these slots, which the rest of the mountain that Sisyphus is climbing will slot into. I'm going to use my metal ruler as a guide to then lightly score down this thick black line, which is our folding mark. So I'm just going to use one bit of my scissors and lightly draw it along this. You don't want to cut through or ruin the surface of the card or paper especially, and it just makes sure you have a nice clean line to fold along. You don't want to add bulk here. Now here's me gluing. This is my glue technique. Once around the outside, a little bit in the middle, but just making sure that there are no gaps so that you get a nice strong hole. Dry glue is great because once it's done, you get a really solid piece. And if you wait for it to properly dry, this step's much easier. You cut down each one of the slots. And this is, as I said, where the mountain pieces will go later on and hold the whole thing in place. Two of these complete. Here's your base, ready to go. Okay, so the main pieces just need cutting all the way around the outside, and then you'll need a craft knife just to cut those little lines, and they'll be the slots for Sisyphus. So here they are. There's also at the bottom of each piece 2 grey lines that are the slots that go into the base. Now you might need to go back and finesse these. For my 300 GSM stock, I needed to go back and cut these to about 1 millimetre width so that the slots were wide enough to slot cleanly onto the base. Otherwise the whole thing gets a bit skew-iff. Now take your ruler and just slice open the slots for Sisyphus. Press really hard with these so that you don't have to go back over and cut them to make them open. They're already marked to be slightly wider than the tab at the bottom of the Sisyphus piece, so that he should slot in quite easily. So here's all the pieces in the order that they'll go in. Creates a nice sort of switchback as you get to the top. So let's put it together with that delightfully bad edit. I started with the back here and put the back piece in and then put the front pieces in. To be honest, I think I probably should have started in the middle and then worked backwards and forwards. It just made it easier. But it'll take you a few moments and then you'll have something that looks like this, which was too big to fit behind my camera screen, so I had to zoom out. And at this point, it's looking pretty good and nicely 3D. So here it is, standing on top of my very dusty printer, ready to have something added to it. And that would be Sisyphus. So we're going to cut out his piece, making sure not to cut it in two by accident, because that makes it easier to glue and cut if it's still joined by that little isthmus between the two sides. He's double-sided so that when you finish getting him up the first part of the mountain, you can flip him over and he'll go up the next part in the other direction. And it just looks a bit cooler, really. Here he is, and his ascent up that mountain throughout Advent will mark your own determination to get to our final goal, the end of this year. Now, if you want your mountain to be a bit more interesting, I've included these optional characters, and I've put a sort of glowing background around them to make them easier to cut out if you don't fancy doing really, really fiddly bits. I've got all your favourites here from the Underworld, and also the Hydra is in the Underworld. Virgil says so, so I thought I'd add her because she's so colourful. And we've got the ghostly judges of the Underworld too. And here's a serving suggestion, if you will. I put my bigger characters at the front and my Hydra at the back to add a bit of colour. And maybe it just makes Sisyphus feel like he's not so alone. I think we all need that this year. So far, looking pretty good. On the final day, you can use the last piece. Cut those thick black slits and then slot him on the top of the mountain in a celebratory gesture. And there it is. I hope you have great fun with this year's Advent calendar. Have a lovely winter season and see you next year.